Welcome back to the Pure Purpose Podcast. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode. I enjoyed it so much that I brought Christopher Dreesing back. Last week, we talked about seat time versus competency-based learning. So, great episode. Love the conversation. I just love that we can push it forward.
Me too.
So, we're going to talk about MTSS today and give really just people an understanding what that is. What is that?
So multi-tiered system of support, and it's designed to be, you and I have talked a great deal about the cookie cutter approach of public education.
Yeah.
Just because it has to be.
Yeah.
You get this pot of money, you got to get the best bang of the buck.
Yeah.
Hit the most kids. Well, there's a push by, again, last episode, we talked a little bit about Every Student Succeeds Act.
Yeah.
And that pushed on states. And part of that was you can't just kind of wash your hands of the kids not graduating.
Sure.
How are you going to get the kid engaged before they drop out?
Yeah.
So MTSS is that process, and they have it in tiers. So the first tier is universal.
Yep.
Everybody gets it. And for your viewers and you, if you're familiar with the standard deviation, you're going to hit a chunk of the kids with tier one, and it's going to be for everybody.
Yep.
It's going to be classroom management. It's going to be having good skills in the lunchroom, having good skills on the bus line, expectations for everybody. Then there's tier two. So you are having problems in the classroom and you're getting sent out of the classroom.
Sure.
You can't maintain in the cafeteria. You're throwing food. You're getting distracted. And so there's going to be interventions at the tier two level that help you stay focused and maybe give you more opportunities to take breaths in the day and reflect. And then ultimately for that 1% of the population, there's tier three. And tier three is a lot of times where the MTSS process can fall apart just because you've already been doing interventions.
Yeah.
So what's the next intervention?
Yeah.
And a lot of places kind of go, well, now it's time to wash our hands and go, well, that kid's going there or they're not here anymore. And there's some truth to that because if you've been trying everything in your building, what else is there to try?
Yeah.
So tier three starts a conversation of where can this kid go to learn better and what can their day look like that we might be able to help them. So a great example is tier three is often a great door opening for special education testing.
Yeah.
What accommodations does this kid need to maintain a regular day of education?
Start heading into IEPs and all the above.
Yeah. And so that's really the process in general. And then the MTSS process is often referred to as like a triangle.
Yeah.
And the right side of the triangle is behavior.
Yeah.
And the left side's academics. So even I just fell into the whole trap and the stereotype of it. It's always the behavior kid. But sometimes it's the academic kid.
Yeah.
So so tier one is the regular, and our last episode talked about this. Tier two is that advance.
Yeah.
And how do you push them? Or is tier two they're below grade level?
Yeah.
And then tier three is they're so advanced that we're going to create a competency-based education system to push them through and get them where they need to be. Or is tier three, dude, you're a ninth grader reading at second grade level.
Yeah.
There's no way that we can have you catch up. It just go into class.
Right.
It has to be very strategic, huge interventions. And typically it can't just be a regular English classroom.
Yeah.
It's got to be a specialized teacher to help you.
Yeah.
And right now, MTSS systems are prevalent, but they're not great. And that's where kids fall off is because they'll hit tier two and there's nothing at tier three, or systems will go, you're tier one and then we'll skip tier two, tier three.
Yeah.
And you're expelled. Bye.
Yeah.
And
That's great. I often see a lot of schools only trying to do tier one on the lowest level.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like we have this program, and I won't call them out, but these programs that we're doing where for 15 minutes in advisory, I'm going to read you a little lesson.
Right.
That's all the tier one is.
Yeah.
Right. And then, like you said, there's no tier two, there's no tier three.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to this, though, you're the first person that actually has shared with me that that's not only just behavioral, it's actually academic too.
Yeah.
So why isn't that acknowledged?
Well, and so it's easy to, I think, and again, just my opinion, and not as a district employee, but just it's easier to focus on behavior, right? You got somebody in a room ringing a bell.
It's tangible.
Yeah,
it's
you're
right
like,
there.
hey, knock it off, kids. Kid with the bell, stop it, take the bell away, no more bell.
Yeah.
you got a kid quietly in the corner struggling to read. You'll notice that kid.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to address behavior than it is academics. And also it's easier to address behavior because everybody universally agrees there should be no disruption to the day. Sure. So if a kid is having issues controlling themselves because they're misdiagnosed, they don't have accommodations, it's easier to go, that kid needs this and get them out of here. Where that academic kid who's struggling, who's shy, who's quiet, or who's gifted and just trying to figure life out, they're not making a big scene of things. So they get to struggle a little bit longer than the kids who are behaviors.
Right. Well, to me, it's simple. Get to the roots, you fix the behavior.
Yeah. Yep.
And schools don't want to address that. I'm just going to say it. A lot of schools don't want to address that they actually have to get to the root. They try to treat the symptoms. Yeah. And that's where this MTSS system, it's all crisis. Mm-hmm. That's where we're living from. Mm-hmm. And so, when it gets time to tier 3, you're looking, whoever you are in that building, you're looking where to dump them.
Right. Yeah.
And that's, to me, I'm going to say this is my opinion, but I that's unfair. That's unfair to those kids. If I was actually doing a lot of research on this week, and everyone said that I've seen is that, I agree with this because I've been saying this for the last couple of years, it needs to all start at tier 1. Everyone needs this type, like programs, behavior programs, healthy living skills, whatever you want to say. And yes, I'm going to say it, education, schools, you need to start paying attention to this right now because it's becoming a problem and you're not going to get anywhere with your kids. So yes, this needs to become a priority. I said it, you know what I'm saying? But it's one of those situations where it needs to start out and then we tailor it back from there. But if we destigmatize it, no one will know the difference.
Yeah. And what you're hitting on is exactly right. So we often look at, we stigmatize behavior and we say, well, this intervention is just for those tier 2. So I think of like tier 1, like you teach self-regulation, right, to everybody. You go, hey, everybody, this is how you self-regulate. And if you're getting frustrated, here's what you do to cool down. But when you only do that at a tier 2 level, you get kids who are already like, I know I can't self-regulate. Like, I know that. Where if you had somebody in the classroom who learned that and they're like, hey, man, you need a fidget.
That's it.
That's all you need. If you want my pencil, here you go, fidget on that. And then you have kids looking out for each other. But there's a stigma with it, and you don't want to be near the naughty kid. You don't want to be near the kid ringing the bell. And so there's a shy way. But I also think that, so I agree, and I also disagree a little bit. That's okay. Yep. That I get where kids get, or I get where schools get with the tier 3, where they're like, I need this kid gone because they've tried stuff or they've not, and they just want to be done. And that's not fair to anybody, and that's not how it should be, but I get it. I've had that kid where I'm like, buddy, you're distracting me. 90% of my time has been spent on
with you.
And I can't have this anymore.
Sure.
And so I get it, but I don't know what it looks like, because I have also been a product of the system where I'm like, well, I know that kid gets kicked out, so let's go that route.
Right.
Rather than, well, let's try this.
Right.
Because I've not really learned that route.
Sure.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where things go academics, because that's kind of, that's one, and then behavior, but they're so intermixed, and typically that tier 3 kid is not reading at grade level.
Sure.
So what are you going to do to address academics and behavior?
Right.
And then that blows my mind. Like, I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but again, obviously someone dropped the ball on the way with that kid, right? Let's just say that kid can't read at that level.
Yep.
But again, I go back to think about this young generation today. They're so clouded inside that they don't know which way is up. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to do the best they can. I don't know if I told you about like how I run my program in my schools. The whole school does it.
Yeah, good. Yes, I did know that. I do like that.
Everybody. Yep. Now there's some that have opted out, but it's very rare, and we go through it.
That's cool.
And when we, I get them during actual class period.
Yes.
Right? So they may be in math and come to me, and I get them for 45 minutes. Now, a lot of my schools are doing block periods, so they have that time built in, but that kind of goes back to that competency-based learning a little bit, because I give them stuff too to learn and gauge. I have to do surveys and different things like that.
Yeah.
But it goes back to, now they understand an issue in their life, and now they go back to class, and it's not as big of a problem as when they came. Now, sometimes some just don't want to do the work,
right?
But it's one of those situations, and so I'm a firm believer that, where did that kid start getting told, you're not good enough,
right?
You're not great at this, you can't do it,
or even or just not had anybody say anything, right?
Right,
because they were so busy that they didn't know, and they were at a school of 2,000 kids.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. And that's where I get torn a little bit. I love public education because I've been in it. I'm a product of it. I went to St. Anthony's until 9th grade. It used to be a 9th grade program. I had 4. I
remember you saying that. Yeah.
There were just 4 of us in there. So I have that background. And then I've been in public school ever since. And I love it. But I also see the need for innovation. And I think it's going to come forward in privatization of schools.
Sure.
It's going to come forward in charters. It's going to come forward in voucher systems. And it pains me to say that, because then you look at all these studies, especially on the East Coast, where voucher systems are used to exclude kids. Lotteries are used to exclude the kid that doesn't read at grade level. So then they're sent to remediation school, and it's a whole bunch of kids who need remediated. And then you get that idea that, well, I'm just here to learn this other way, and I'm not smart like the other kids. And so I don't know, it becomes a problem, but without people coming in and innovating, and you really can't do that in a federal program, because so many people are saying, test this, test that, and you've got to teach to the test, because you just have to. It'd be weird if you didn't. If you never looked at the test and you had kids show up and go, well, I don't know what's on it, but I'll try my best. Right. You got to look at it.
Yeah.
And so then when you get charters and private schools that are free from that, they can innovate and they can be creative, and they can. In the last episode, you talked about World of Work. Yeah. I thought you were going to say World of Warcraft. And I was like, Bobby, that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. You were playing World of Warcraft.
I wish.
But that's what it could be, right? Why couldn't that happen at school and let kids have a little fun and play? Because play is shown to improve students' overall mental health.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to look like playground stuff.
Right.
Let them have fun.
Yeah.
Play on a computer a little bit. Go back to class.
So I have a goal one day, and I don't know what this looks like exactly, but that like my program is adopted by schools, and kids that are struggling can go down there and work with homework, work on life skills, all the above. And I think I'm going to say this. You can tell me if you agree or disagree. I think every school needs to start looking at this.
Agreed.
It has to be. And I'm not just saying a full-time counselor in the school. I mean, because that's not working.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they're supposed to be guidance counselors.
Yep.
Which guidance counselor we know is just all academic.
Yep.
But now they've turned into therapists.
Yep.
And triage nurses.
Yep.
And that's where, and so where is that catch? Where, okay, we have to do the testing. We have the standardized stuff. We have to make sure we get so much seat time. Something's got to give.
Yeah. And like you said with counselors, they're all in charge of that too.
Absolutely.
And then the viewers of your podcast, those that are counselors will tell you, and they have to do threat assessments, and they got to come in and help staff who are like, I'm upset because this kid said this, and they're having to use their mental health skills. But especially in the state of Wyoming, you can actually just get a guidance counselor degree. Yeah. But staff wouldn't know that. Yeah. So they're coming to you, but you're really there to help kids go to college.
Go to college.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. It's not to intervene and provide mental health. Meanwhile, there's a mental health epidemic. And so there have been grants that come out. And so I think of like programs like yours. I think of peer mentors. So I love that you're in schools teaching other kids how to do it, because I think really that's where you start to see a lot of success, where you train up other kids to help each other. Yeah. To say, hey, when you see this kid struggling, you can know some things, and it's not on you. You don't have to. But like you can say, hey, man, you need some help. Or, hey, I know this program works. Do this. Yeah. I see you struggling with this. Come join us. Yeah. Yeah. And that's neat.
Because the kids are on the front line.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So they're the first ones to hear about it.
Absolutely.
And so why not equip them to be able to sit down with those people and be like, hey, you know what's going on? You know what I mean? Because here's the deal. It's like anything. Like if I'll use this analogy, like in a church, it's not up to just the pastor to do everything.
Right.
members in the congregation that we're called to do certain things.
Yes.
Right. And so, but it's like now this is what we say. It's like, all right, the principal's, he's got to do this, and the teacher's got to do this, and the guidance counselor's got to do this. And we're all looking around at times, not saying all the time, for who's going to do it.
Yeah.
Who's going to actually take the reins?
Well, and I'll tell you, I read a really interesting study lately where it was an ethnography, which means the study of culture of a school, and how that impacts success. And the study was based on an elementary school, and they were measuring kids tattling, and kids preferred not to tattle because they could see the impact on a teacher who has to investigate
and go through it.
Yep. And so they would keep stuff to themselves. And so pushing occurred, name calling occurred. And slowly that bar of what was acceptable at school rose so that kids were getting bullied and not saying anything because they were like, I love my teacher and I don't want them to have to look into this.
Right.
Or the behavior became so egregious that everyone's like, oh my gosh, you just punched that kid. Well, yeah, he's been picking on me for weeks. Why don't you say anything? Well, they're not going to say, I knew it was going to take time. They're just like, I didn't say anything.
Right.
So it created this, it was just a really cool study of like, you have to have kids say stuff.
Yeah.
They're the ones playing with each other.
Yeah.
They've got to hold each other accountable. Yeah. And then the adults around them have to believe them and work with them to fix it.
They have to be empowered.
Yep.
They have to be empowered to speak up and say something. If they don't feel safe, they won't.
Yep.
And so that's, again, no one's bashing public education here. There's a lot of things that need to change. Like I would say, and I think, what I believe is that if you start tending to these kids' inner issues, again, you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Mm-hmm. Like the basic needs, if the kids don't have that. I mean, I know for me, if I'm going through something and I'm cloudy, I'm not gonna be good in anything.
No.
I can get through it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, we have this really cool program in Internal County. It's called Caring About Student Success, CAS. And it's through Casper Police Department. And when a kid has a contact with a police officer, they'll let the district know, they'll let me know so that I can work with schools. So a kid whose parents have a domestic abuse issue at 11 o'clock at night, I'll get a CAS card in the morning. It says, hey, Bobby had a rough night last night. Because it's going back to just what you talked about. Bobby's not learning the next day. He watched his mom get beat up. Yeah. Like if he's coming to school, he's thinking about that all day long.
Absolutely.
So then my role with Casper PD is to reach out to the administrator and say, hey, Bobby's going to have a rough day. Give him some grace. Yeah. And one of the classic misfires of this was this program has been around for a while. In my first years of working with Casper PD, we missed one and it didn't come through till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I got it and I called the principal and I said, hey, Dave's going to have a rough day today. And they went, oh, we suspended David for 3 days because he got in a fight at school because it was a domestic violence. And I had to go, shoot. And so I met with Casper PD. We all worked on it so that they'd be quicker because that kid, he was never going to learn. He was just in a crisis mode trying to make it through the day. And that's where we as adults have to be able to recognize and say, it's all right, man. Today's not learning day. Yeah. Like we're going to go approach it. And there's no stigma to that. Right. You can come to school. We are safe. We will keep you safe. You get food here. Yeah. Academics are great, but Maslow's hierarchy today, you need just some safety. You need to know that it's not about survival. We're going to take care of you.
This is your place to be that. And I agree. And that's so, I agree with that. One of the biggest things is, where do you think that tier system needs to change? Like at what level do you think, like where do you think some are doing it really well and where do you think some aren't?
Yeah, that's a good question. So tier 3 is probably the biggest area that needs to change just because it's often just where everybody wants to go. Yeah. They want to get there because that's probably the most intensive care the kid's going to get. Yeah. And I often get complaints or hear people complain about school. And I've never met a teacher who doesn't care for a kid. Sure. Like everybody does. It's just a level of how involved are they? How busy are they? It's all that. So tier 3 is how do I get them help the quickest? Yeah. And it's often not at the building they're at. Yeah. And so I think where I see the most success is probably elementary in that because there's a stigma around kicking an elementary kid out. you can't kick a third grader out.
Sure.
Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
So they'll own a kid way longer than a high school.
Yeah.
So you'll see a kid with maybe, a whole bunch of referrals to the office, a lot of behaviors, and the elementary school is just bending over backwards, where the high school is like, we're going to give you a couple shots at this. And rightfully so, right?
Yeah.
They're a high schooler. They should know better. But that's where the disconnect is how do you give a tier 3 to a high schooler without just kicking them out? And that's what we measure, right? Is graduation rate.
Yeah.
So that's really where it does matter. We measure literacy. So as long as they're on reading at grade level, that's great. Somewhere along the line, that ball can be dropped.
Sure.
So then how do you fix that? But then ultimately you're going to get to high school and either that kid can read at grade level and have behaviors like his classmates or she can't. And where are they going from there? And so, I've not seen that. Wyoming's so unique.
Yeah.
I mean, Natrona County is one of the few places that actually have education after a kid is expelled. So like in many counties, you're just kicked to the curb and good luck to you. In ours, we continue to provide you an education. So I have that perspective. There's no one else in the state of Wyoming that I can reach out to or look at and go, how are you guys doing it? They don't. So then I have to look at conferences and other places and go, okay, how are you guys doing it? But then it's so skewed. So like the last conference I went to where that was the conversation was in Memphis. And so it's an interesting conversation, but they're dealing with stuff that we've got kids that think they're gangbangers. They have straight up gangs there.
Yeah.
And so they're sometimes way more involved and doing other things. And you coming from Colorado probably know that way more than
seen it.
Yeah. And so I have to deal with little first world problems and not that. And so the conversation can never really be, how does it work in Casper, Wyoming? Yeah. I get to hear about like thick urban centers. And I'm like, okay, well, I could maybe use a quarter of what you just talked about, and I hope it would work. Yeah. Yeah. Man,
that's crazy. Yeah. No, I see that too. And tier 3 is just always that, again, it's that crisis mode, right? And that's why I think like at the beginning, like when you get them at tier 1, then you instill the culture and then they know.
Yep.
Right. And then tier 2, it's like, okay, maybe you just don't get it yet. You know what I mean? But I really believe that there shouldn't be many kids. If a school's taking the right approach with everything, there shouldn't be a ton of kids in tier 3. You know what I mean? And there's not typically, but I think, I'll be honest with you, I think more schools have more tier 3 kids.
I would agree.
Than any other
and
tier.
And I would tell you, because it's the one to default to. Yeah. That kid walking the streets, a tier 3.
Yeah.
That just didn't get the help they needed.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know where we fix that. It's again, it's novel. So as Every Student Succeeds Act is telling states they've got to fix it. States are trying, but then there's accountability with testing.
Yeah.
So you can fix that behavior. Or I'll give you the other side of that. You have parents who don't believe that it's the school's job.
Yeah, there's a catch, right? 22.
Right. Yes. And so it's you're not teaching my kid grit, I teach him grit, but you're not. That's why at 5th grade we actually teach a class called growth and development.
Yeah.
And as a male teacher, I typically get asked to go into with the boys.
Sure.
And so it's a lot of like, it's not sex ed, but it's more puberty.
Sure.
And my biggest thing is I start off the bat and I come in and I don't slam my hand down, but I make a noise so they look at me. I'm like, you have to wear deodorant. Please, for everything that's good in this world, put some deodorant on. And then we have I'm like, this is antiperspirant. This is like a blue one, a white one, roll on, a spray. And I'm like, just know that. And I have to do that because parents don't. And many of them don't get that, but that's okay. And that's no fault on a parent. Yeah. It's just, that's what we've got to do in public education is say, hey, you're going to have to shave. And this is, and so look on the internet. And that's why that one guy is super successful with his YouTube. Like he's a dad for people that didn't have a dad.
Oh yeah. I think I've seen that.
Yeah. To show them because, and what's crazy is our culture is like, oh, they celebrate that guy. Like, look at that guy. But schools could do that.
They have to.
Yes.
That's what it's become.
We have to. And then there's pushback. And so then we have to navigate that.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot that plays into all that. But yeah, I agree. It's no longer because the reality is not in just disclaimer. I'm not saying every parent, but a lot of parents out there aren't doing that.
Right.
And so unfortunately during the school year, not unfortunately, I guess this is whatever. But what I'm saying is split it any way you like it. teachers, schools are with these kids more than their parents are.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to say, this is where we're at.
Yeah.
Let's address it.
Yep. And back to what you had said with the tier 3 and the kid, more tier 3 than there are tier 2. That's often where parents need help, right? And then there's a stigma that as I work with parents, they'll come in and you can just tell they feel ashamed, like they failed.
Yeah.
And they didn't fail. It's just the world that they live in.
Right.
I had one parent one time, they had just lost their job and they came in for a meeting because their kid is having all these behaviors. And it's like, how are you going to help your kid? You just lost that's what you got to be thinking about is how's their food on the table?
That's it.
And your kid's getting kicked out of school. Yeah. So there has to be a little bit of leniency in our system to say, no, we got your kid. You worry about you and trust us. It's okay. But that's also some of the problems that we're starting to see is there's that lack of trust. And so COVID has instilled in many people this anti-system, anti-trust, because it's all, who do I believe? Are you pulling the wool over my eyes? And so we've got to get past that as well. And so as we're looking at these tiered systems, as you have one school do it really well and another school not, and that parent is skipping schools because they're having issues or running, then they start to feel frustrated because they're like, well, why did that school do it so well and you don't? Yeah. And you don't, I don't know how to answer them, especially as you start looking nationwide and you get kids moving because their parents lose their jobs. Yeah. And so then you get a kid in the system and you're like, have you ever had MTSS approach? Or they've been in a system where they're a tier 2 and they're getting great resources, but then this specific school doesn't have good tier 2. Yeah. And again, it just takes time. And so what do you do with those kids in this time frame as they're getting services or not getting services? And I don't know.
It is because some don't qualify for services. Yeah. Some, you know what I mean? So it's just, and here's the deal. Every school is going to be different. It's not going to be a one size fit all approach. It's going to be what works for you. Like I have a school that I work with. They have for 2 years I've been with them. They don't have a ton of kids. I will tell you that they're under 100 kids, but I have a 0% opt out right there. Yeah. Like that they're just in. And it's like, just like, hey, we're destigmatizing this. We're going after the things that you just may see as a problem in your life.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring that up because I love data that comes from a school of 100 because it's kind of neat, right? Like,
it is.
So you get a graduation rate of 100% because everybody's involved. Sure. And then you say, hey, what electives did you have? And they're like, I didn't have a choice. I had PE. Right. Because that's all you get with 100 kids. So I get torn because you get that school with 2,000. You get the funding for 2,000. So you can get we taught a nails class. Yep. We taught welding. Right. But the 100 school kid, you had one thing. And if you didn't like it, you're building birdhouses.
And I'll tell you this, man, the schools that I work with, like in rural Colorado, there is a lot of leniency there.
I'm sure.
Like kids can leave and go to the gas station. Like I've been actually shocked to see that. But that's almost like that. Like it's the smaller schools are actually doing it a little bit just better because they don't have as many kids to worry about.
Yeah. And so is that the solution, right? Like, is it smaller? And is it?
Yeah, it could be.
You give up that crazy cool elective class.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, even you look at the overall, maybe some kid would want to go virtual more than be in school. So let them do that. Yep. Some kids may need to be there. I mean, I think, one thing you can run into with some of this stuff, if it is, and I will say this because there's just influences in the world today like this, but if a kid's not in school, they could be out getting in trouble. And so it's so you gotta, obviously I think there has to be an earning system with that. Yeah. And somewhat to say, hey, if I give you this schedule, that means you've earned it. Yep. Dude, yeah. I want to address something from our first episode. Yeah. I just want to address it for the viewers out there. We are not saying it's teachers' fault. We're not saying it's principals' faults. We're not saying it's parents' faults. I just want y'all to know, we are just attacking the conversation in just a way of saying what needs to happen, what needs to change. And so I just want to disclaim that and make that clear. No one's at fault. The teachers aren't at fault. Teachers are doing the best they can. Parents aren't at fault. Administrators aren't at fault. Name it. The kids aren't at fault. Yeah. So I just wanted to just
I like that, and I appreciate that because it's all products of the system.
Absolutely.
Right? We're all just trying our best, and I often tell parents because again they come forward and they feel shame. why are you ashamed? There's no book out there. Like, we're just trying to figure it out.
Absolutely.
So I love that disclaimer, because teachers are just trying to figure it out. Admin's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's worth the time too to say, as the system, we're going to see a shift in the system.
Yeah.
As it gets
it
harder.
Yeah.
As it gets harder and we don't know what to do, it's going to take innovation. And so we'll see people say, nope, this isn't for me. We'll see parents say, nope, you're doing a bad job. And it's just working with them and having a conversation to make it better.
Absolutely. I love it. Dude, another great episode.
Yeah.
So glad having you, man.
Thanks.
Tell my listeners you're going to be okay. I love y'all. There's so much gold inside of you that's going to help you walk the greatness outside of you. Continue to live full and a whole life. And I promise you, the results will be something that you're proud of. I love y'all. I'll see you next time.